Hey everybody, I'm at VCF Southwest in Austin, Texas, and I'm streaming live actually from my basement in Ottawa, Canada. Today we're going to talk about the NABU Network, and it's the internet before the internet. And we're going to be taking a look at the NABU computer, and we're going to take a look at the actual... I'm at VCF Southwest in Austin. I should actually get rid of the extra stream that I have there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start by talking a little bit about the NABU network and what it is. The NABU network, well, first of all, I'm going to talk about who I am. My name is Leo Binkowski. I was a games programmer and software developer for the NABU network. Eventually, I became director of content development, and I ended up keeping a bit of it for you after 40 years so that you can take a look at it. So this is a different kind of computer. It's kind of MSX based, but it's not quite the same as an MSX. It came out around the same time. So there's me. That's what I look like today. And essentially, and there's my stream with me. So that's how I used to look 40 years ago, and that's how I look like today. But right now, we're going to talk about these guys here. So 2 years ago, a guy named James Pellegrini, in his barn, he kept 2,500 of these NABU computers. Now, I used to work for NABU, and I thought they were all gone. As a matter of fact, they weren't quite all gone. I had a few in my basement, and I had some of the software. So this guy started selling them on eBay. Now, what ended up happening is people got these boxes, and they had no software, and they were using them as project boxes. They're nice, solid boxes. They're nice and metal. I'm going to show you one in a bit. And then this guy bought one, the guy on the right. His name is DJ Shures, and he was basically playing with it, and he was learning how to do it. Now, he's got a past with NABU because his father and his uncle were both founders of NABU. So I started watching his stream and sort of trying to figure out what was going on and that kind of stuff. And I saw that he was getting pretty far. So what I did is I contacted him via LinkedIn, and I said to him, just in a LinkedIn message, I said, if you connect with me, I'll make all your NABU dreams come true. And so I did. I had extracted some of the NABU software onto PC disks back in 2009, but I hadn't done anything with them because, you know, you need an audience for anything, and I didn't really have one. So it was fun showing my kids and my grandkids what I did in the past, and that's kind of neat. And they go, video games, cool, and then they go on to their own video games, Roblox, etc. But in my case, I had them around for DJ to take a peek at. So we got to talking, and I started telling him, and he started to figure out that I was the real deal. I ended up sending him the operating system in the main menu just to test, and he managed to get it going. So I ended up sending him the rest of it. Now, I managed to recover probably about half the stuff that I had in my basement on floppies and that kind of stuff. So I sent him as many things as I could, a couple copies of the main menu, and a whole pile of the software. So that went really, 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 really good for a while, and we ended up meeting. Now this is his name. I'll show you what it looks like. So it's got a beautiful keyboard. It's got a solid metal case, and the thing is nice and square. That's not the only thing that's kind of nice about it. It was just a solid computer. It wasn't meant to be originally, like it says NABU personal computer on the front, but it wasn't meant to be a computer that, it was meant to be a home video device. It was meant to be an information appliance. It wasn't meant to be a gaming console. It ended up that way. So it's kind of got some unique features that we're going to go through to check out. Now, as far as I'm concerned, so this project that we've started ended up growing. We have a website, nabu.ca, and we have forums, nabu.ca, and we even have a Discord that I have in the links there that you can basically see what's happening with people live, in the sense that there's a lot of other projects going on and people are discussing it. So let me talk about NABU just for a minute. It ended up being formed out of 5 companies in Ottawa, and it had a lot of venture capital provided by a man named Robert Compo. So we had one VC angel investor, and we had 5 companies that came together that had different strengths. One was Andicom, which made computers. Another one was Computer Innovations, which was really a computer store and computer distributor as well. And Bruce Instruments, which was run by Leo Bruce Hempel, and he knew cable technology. They made switch boxes, cable converters, all kinds of stuff. So he knew cable, and his company knew cable. A company called Mobius Software that did consulting, and Volker Craig, which made terminals, which gave us was one of the reasons we have such a wonderful keyboard. So the system that I'm showing up there is a NABU 1100. It's a NABU PC, and I'm showing a game card as well. So the NABU 1100, that big box on the bottom, had 8-inch floppies, and it was a Z80 machine similar to the NABU, and it was made out of wood, the case, which was kind of neat. And but we used that for development to basically build our software in the past. And the system on top of it is the NABU PC that was eventually built. We got ours delivered to us as developers in 1983, early 1983, and so we started working with them, and they ended up turning into our development machines by basically putting two of them together so we could piggyback on each other. Now, another thing about this picture is also shows a floppy unit, a dual floppy unit. This is from Santo. I actually have one of them as well, and I have a couple of other single floppy units. NABU originally wasn't envisioned to have a floppy drive because we were supposed to do the cable two-way. However, we found that none of the cable providers could actually provide two-way cable at the time. So we sort of did it kind of one way in a very clever way. And I'm going to talk about the NABU adapter in a second. Now, the other computer that the NABU had, by the way, I have one other computer called the NABU 1600. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because the unit on the bottom is called the MSU, the mass storage unit. It had a 10 meg hard drive, and it has a 1 meg floppy drive. But it ended up being part of our development machines using NABU computers eventually. Now, here's where I really want to talk about this technology a lot, because what actually was going on here is that we had a head-end computer, and it was a Gould cell. I think I have it on the next frame. Yes. So that was a Gould cell, which was a very, very fast mini computer, comparable to a VAX. We also had a VAX that we used to do some of the development and so on. But we ended up not using it as the head-end computer because it was just too slow. The Gould cell had a very, very fast memory mapped I/O bus, and it was just perfect for using for the cable. So that was the one that we used to be broadcasting the software on the head end. But let me get back to this diagram for a second, because it shows a lot of different things that are going on. So we had a head end computer, and we had a modulator that was literally a very fast piece of hardware that combined with the cable TV's own broadcast computer and basically spliced it into the feed. In our case, we used channel 31 because it was the dirtiest channel on cable at the time. Because there was other dirty channels as well, but that was one of the dirtiest ones. But we had no trouble broadcasting. So the way the software worked is that we had a cycle that was broadcast every 10 megabytes every 13 seconds. That's 6.3 megabits per second. This was in 1982 when 2400 baud modems were just appearing. Those were two-way. Ours was one-way, but it blasted it down at 6.3 megabits per second. But as it turned out, for what we were trying to do as an information appliance, it worked pretty well. If all of you can remember Web 1.0, which was basically you asked for something and you got a page. There wasn't forms or anything like that initially. Originally, it was just static pages. So if we use the same metaphor here, if you request a static page and then wait for it to fly by on the cycle, then you can grab it. As far as you were concerned, it was a request response kind of architecture, which is exactly the same as like Web 1.0. And this is why I say this is like the internet before the internet. And it wasn't merely downloading static games, and it wasn't merely downloading static things. We were able to change the cycle live. And this was the only really good demonstration of that was we also had the time. The NABU system knew the exact time, unlike most computers in 1982. If you had a Commodore 64, you had an IP PC, if you needed to play with the time, and most people had in their batch files, you had to set the time. In our case, we got the time from the cable, and that was live and set. So every time we asked for the time, it was always accurate to exactly that time, which was really, really handy for keeping all of the computers synced, but also just for giving good time. People would actually look at it. In 1982, not a lot of clocks were accurate. So if you had one that was set all the time that you could just turn on and look at, NABU was one of them. So that was kind of a neat feature of it. But because we could change things live, we could also change information live, which was also kind of really neat because we had a lot of ideas for doing that live. And for one specific thing, for a period of time, we also provided stocks. Now, when it was linked to the Toronto Stock Exchange at the time, but originally what we had it set to is that what we would do is that we'd get them every night. So every night we go to the TSC computers, we download all of the stocks, and it actually wasn't that much data. It was literally a couple pages of text data. And then put them into our, put them up on the NABU. And people in the morning, actually pretty much after midnight, they could take a look at what the stocks were for the day. This was really, really powerful for a lot of people because people who were doing stocks in the 80s had two choices. They either got themselves a stock ticker or they read the paper when it came out in the morning. So in Canada, it was the Globe and Mail. They would quickly grab the early edition of it and plan their attack. In our case, we could provide those yesterday's numbers by midnight, and we did. So that meant that people could plan their attack for the day as much as they wanted in the middle of the night. And there was a few people that were really, really sad when we shut that particular feature down. We shut it down mostly because we ran out of money and we couldn't afford the fees for it. But at the time, it was a very good show of how things were working. We also had another piece of software called Trend Analysis that we kept track of all of those daily stock things, and we put up monthly graphs and so on so that people could check to see what their stock trends were. Those were two pieces of software that were actually spectacular. I have never recovered them. I wish I would, because they were a good demonstration of what a request response architecture can do. You asked for your stock, it gave you what the value was of the previous day by midnight. That was kind of neat. So, but remember, this is 6.3 megabits per second. We're dropping stuff down here, and the computers themselves weren't that fast. 1863, which was an RS-485 chip, a high-speed serial chip. Well, high speed for the time. And what that allowed us to do is to take that super fast speed of the adapter, transfer it to the computer, like step it down to 100K per second, well, actually 111 kilobits per second, and then send it to the computer. Because that chip was so fast, we did all kinds of things with it. We could emulate things with it. But moreover, what was neat was that it was faster than any serial port, and it's faster than the floppy drives of any machine at the time, just on a serial port. We had our own floppy drive, and it was a regular parallel floppy port using the Western Digital chip that everybody used in the 1980s. But in this particular case, we also had this high-speed interface, and the interface was what allowed us to talk to the adapter, but it also makes the computer special because it can talk back and forth very fast, and it's expandable to do other things. Let me get back to this. So, from what we were trying to do, though, was we weren't trying to make video games. As I mentioned before with the TSC, the main focus originally was to make an information appliance, a video appliance. And for that reason, a lot of what drove us at the time was specifically things like information applications, educational applications. We realized at the time that making education applications is what makes it palatable to parents to buy, right? If I were to offer you a computer that just plays games, and I just wanted to quickly go through it because we're going to take a look at it live in a second. But I'm going to talk about NABU marketing right now. So NABU marketing had sort of three major thrusts. One was cable companies. So the idea is we had to market to a cable company because cable companies are gatekeepers. They hold, like, if you want to be on the internet now, you pretty much have to deal with one of the TV companies in Canada, Bell or Rogers, or in the States it's a similar thing. You're either dealing with Verizon, AT&T. They're gatekeepers, and as a result, you have to convince them to allow you to use their technology on their network. Now, NABU was nice and simple. It was really simple. All they needed to do was integrate a video stream that happened to be a little bit different because it contained data. But it used all of the normal stuff that any cable company had. It used the same computers, it had the same feeds, the same splices, the same equipment. And that made it very, very easy for us to integrate with them. But as it turned out, that was the hardest job that we had, the very hardest job. The second one, as I mentioned before, was education. Now, in education, we really did a good job. And in the Ottawa area, we had a couple people, Mary Berg and Mary Kay Marsden, that what they did is they went into all the schools and they offered NABU computers to all the schools. What they did is that they put them in labs. Because all the school needed was a cable drop, just one, we can put a lab of 12 machines. We give them this for nothing, by the way. And then what would happen is kids would tag team two at a time for sort of class. So you'd have 12 computers and you have 2 kids at each of the machines. We'd usually give one printer out or get them to get a printer. And all of them had floppy drives so they could save their programs or whatever and then print them off on the printer on the system at the end. It worked very well. I knew of at least running labs like that. And the really interesting thing is immediately in all those schools you start getting interest in the consumer level for the same stuff that they're getting in stores, or sorry, in schools. So, but even interesting, let's talk about how NABU was actually sold. We did not sell the computer. Actually, we did sell the computer. We sold it for roughly $1,000 and the floppy for another $500. But we didn't want to do it that way. What we really wanted to do was something that everybody wants to do today. It was a subscriber level system. So what we did was we put it out as a subscription thing. So if, for instance, you wanted just the computer, all of our homegrown video games, and the educational tier, you paid $20 a month. That was including everything. That's the computer, one joystick, the adapter, and access to the cable. Of course, you already had to have Cablevision. That was a given. But that wasn't our problem. That was for you to get. And what ended up happening is that people got different tiers. Now, when we came out with premium game lists, so for instance, when NABU came out with Pac-Man, Galaxian, and Dig Dug, all 3 of those games, we charged an extra, I think it was $7.95 a month for those 3 games. And but the thing is that they work like cable packages. They could subscribe to a package and then they could not subscribe to a package. Now, and the interesting thing is the adapters each were individually addressable, and I'm going to show you where, so that they knew what they were allowed to have and what they weren't allowed to have. So because the cable stream just basically broadcast all the time, the adapter was our own gatekeeper, which said this subscriber is allowed to use this of the software tiers. So when he asks for that, give it to him. That's kind of nice. But the thing is, we could modify those literally daily. That information was part of that 10 megabit stream. So subscriber information is part of the data stream. So all of that stuff, what they were allowed was provided as well. And if we needed to send a message to them, we could send one. So, like for instance, one of the funny ones that we'd send was like basically to pay your bill. And it was individually sent to that box. When they loaded the menu for the first time, they would see something called a message, and it would pop up, and it would usually be a text message, and would say, like pay your bill or something like that, or your packages have been removed because you haven't paid your bill, that kind of stuff. So it was kind of an easy way to supply access to the system. That was kind of neat too. So. I just wanted to pop that up because we had as an advertisement, we had Doug Henning doing some of the advertising, and Doug Henning has passed away since, but he was around a few times. But it was really interesting. I really wish we'd have kept some of the commercials because they were hilarious, even by 80 standards. That had Doug Henning and making stuff appear and disappear and that kind of stuff with the NABU. So I wanted to talk about Tom Wheeler for a moment. Tom Wheeler was the FCC chair. When the Obama era, so he was there during those 8 years, but he was also president of NABU in the US, which was a really interesting thing. And there's an article in Wired magazine, this one I'm pointing at, where he talks about cable companies being gatekeepers and preventing true innovation from happening in the computer world and that kind of stuff. We only managed to convince Ottawa Cablevision and one other, Tribune Cable, out of Chicago, which basically did a field trial in Alexandria, Virginia. And that ends up with providing us, and I'm just going to find what, I've lost my frames here for a moment because I was rearranging my my program at the last minute. But I wanted to talk about, just a sec, where are you? Can't find it right now. But basically, the computers that I mentioned that were in Maine, that were 2,500 found in a barn, those particular ones were from Tribune Cable and are Alexandria, Virginia. I clarified this. I actually wanted to find out if there were any more NABU computers around, and so I started looking up who ended up buying assets, and it was, of course, it was like finding a maze, and it was full of dead ends. So in Canada, the trail went cold, but in the U.S., this is what was going on. The number of computers, 2,500, closely matches the amount that we thought we sent. Eric Antela told me it was around 3,000, and that's probably a few disk drives and that kind of stuff. But I didn't hear about any disk drives in that collection. But so Tribune Cable actually did a field trial for NABU in Alexandria, Virginia, and it was there for the length of time that NABU was active, and it never went any further than that. The idea was we really wanted to do a field trial in Chicago, but we didn't have enough NABU PCs. The first run of the NABU PCs only ended up making around 30,000 of them, and they were made by a company called Gold Star at the time, is now LG Electronics. They considered it a pre-production run, and or for our 30,000 NABUs. So the 3,000 that are lying around are very likely the ones that were Tribune Cable because they were still in the U.S. And I haven't been able to find any in Canada. But I wanted one of the interesting things is that we were doing all of that. We were putting it all out for in an era that it was a brand new thing, and we knew it was a brand new thing, and we were coming up with all kinds of applications that we thought would be perfect for the cycle and that kind of stuff. And that's what we called it. We called it the cycle because literally it started every 13 seconds and just went around and around and around and around. And it worked very, very well. So the next thing I want to talk about, and so I got to move through my oh, there we go. I lost my place, and that's a big problem. So what I'm going to do, though, what I really, really wanted to do is I want to show you a NABU computer and talk about it in front of it, because almost all of my presentations are like this, where I do a PowerPoint. But I really, really, really would like to talk a little bit about the NABU computer and give some time for people to ask questions, which I know are going to be happening inside of our stream. So now I'm just gonna I'm just gonna show you here. I've got a little, because I can barely see, and I'm trying to make sure that I've got the camera pointed at the right spot. But this is 2 NABU PCs, and I just wanted to show you quickly. And actually, I probably should give it a little bit of light. There we go. So, there we go. So we can see on that stream that we have 2 NABU computers. One's a big rusty one on top, and that's one that Ben cleaned for me, and that's the one we're going to use. The one at the bottom is a very special NABU PC. It's in my presence. It belonged to one of the founders, John Bobak. And when Jay came through, or sorry, when DJ came through town, we went and visited John Bobak. We had the restaurant, and he got this one from his uncle. So I'm going to be sending it to him. But in the meantime, I was just doing a little bit of research on it. But this is the one that I normally use for testing. So I'm going to turn this guy on, and then I'm going to let it move things up. I should probably turn off the light on that one because it makes a big ring. So this is the NABU network, the way it looks. So I'm using our special emulation mode, and I don't want to wreck the cable too much because it's back there, so I'm not going to show it too much. But what we're doing here, so what here we have the menu, and I wanted to show, so here we have educational channel, and I wanted to point out that we're really, really, really big on education. This between anything, like we're, so that we had our own basic language, but one of our favorite things that we ever got was, and the one that was the biggest draw in computers in schools was Logo. We had a more than one programmer at NABU who was very, very good at Logo, so we actually made a few applications that they could just look at the code for. But Logo itself was provided by let's see if I can remember any commands. Whoops. Yeah, so you could. So that's the kind of thing you can do in Logo. The nice thing about Logo is it's like one of those immediate things. It's like what we call in programming a REPL loop, and it's you give it something to say, and it does something, and that was a very powerful feature of Logo. So Logo was really, really nice, and it was available for everybody. But we also had a few applications that were written in Logo so that people could load them and load the code and break out of the code and then see how it was done. And that was kind of nice as well. It's like providing the source code. So now the NABU had a really cool thing. I'm just going to try to hold it up. But we had page keys at the bottom. So these were essentially page keys. Now there's no pages here, so we're just going to go back. But let's try something like World of Games, which I know has more than one page. So when I press the page key on that one, then it just goes in another direction. And the page keys were very important. We consider, because we were going through pages of applications, so that we didn't have really page up and page down. We just had page next and page back. And if you notice, we also have yes and no keys. So when in programs that ask if you could press yes or no, instead of pressing Y or N, you could actually press yes or no. It was just one of those nice things. We also called the enter key the go key, because we weren't trying to call it the enter key. We were trying to say this does something when you press it. And that's kind of nice. We also have this key called the sim. I don't think I'm going to go right there. And right there, the sim key, but basically it's equivalent to an alt key on our PC keyboard. The keyboards themselves are solid as heck, and they last a long time if you treated them as a normal keyboard. I've never seen anybody break them normally except by throwing them. So this is essentially the way the NABU network was, and because of this information presentation, because of the speed of it, because of the wealth of different applications that we were doing for it made it a very, very interesting place to be. We had all kinds of games. Now I have a game here. It says Manager's Baseball. I really wish I could recover this game because it was literally the best game that we had. Oh my God, it came out of this. I had loaded Dig Dug. I was testing the menu value. So if you notice too, you can press things like exit on the keyboard. Another thing that was really, really interesting for NABU, by the way, and I've never seen on any computer since, was this thing called the pause key. So you could basically pause it at any time, even while it was loading. Although I'm not going to do that now. But if you notice, it's so I stopped it right there. But you could stop it at any time. And what people do, there's also a TV NABU key. And I'm hooked up to a monitor, and we don't have broadcast cable anymore because everything's digital now, HDMI and so on. But this used to flip the switch from the NABU computer to back to your normal TV. So people would put pause and go back. Frequently while playing hockey, that's what would happen, was they would watch their hockey game. When the commercial would come on, they would press the TV NABU, press pause, they would go back to their game. As soon as the commercials would end, they would just time it. Some people would have an egg timer. Then they go back to pause, press TV NABU, and go back to the hockey game. This actually occurred. So I wanted to make sure, I've been yapping for a long time, but I wanted to make sure to have enough time for questions. So you want to see the top of the screen. Sorry, I'm going to put it up. There we go. How's that better? Okay, cool. Can you guys still hear me? Or does the mic still have a bad connection? All right, so I'm just going to go back into that one. So now I just want to stop for a second and find out if anybody has any questions. Jay? All right, any questions for now before I go back to yapping? All right, good. We got good audio and everything is going well. I'm going to press the pause button and start with... Where's my joystick? Oh, is that the right one? I don't have a joystick plugged in. I should plug in a joystick before I die. Oop, I pressed reset. Oh, you're asking if this was inspired by Let me stop this. You're asking if this is inspired by Minitel. I'm going to go into that. Minitel was a NAPLIPS-based system, so it used like Teledon was in Canada. There was a push to get NABU to do NAPLIPS, but we did not do it because we couldn't. NAPLIPS required a little bit more of a bit plane-based graphics than what we had. It looked like crap when people tried to do experiments with it and that kind of stuff. Not only that, the NAPLIPS aspect seemed to be a Canadian government kind of initiative as opposed to an industry initiative. Nobody else wanted it but governments. So it's one of those things that we never quite went down the Minitel route, and we weren't really inspired by them. Got another one? Oh, hi, John Short. I see you're there. Oops. Nice to see you. So, is there any other questions? All right. If there are no other questions, I'm going to talk a little bit more. Well, actually, I'm going to give you one last treat. And John is there because he's going to love this treat. So everybody knows that the NABU and MSX were very, very close to each other. But what was nice to see, like for instance, I'm going to go back just one moment. And I'm going to show my favorite game. Where's my joystick? Oh, there it is. Oops. Well, it's not in here. There we go. Packet monitor. So this is a packet monitor. John, remember this guy? So this actually showed adapter errors and input and output. But let me go back a bit because I think you have suggestions for improving composite video. There is no good suggestion for improving composite video. If you want your video to be really nice on the NABU, there's a chip you can buy called F18A that you can substitute into the you can substitute into the TMS 9918 slot, and it will give you a total of first of all, it'll give you 80 columns, but it'll also give you VGA out. So you can hook up a regular VGA system. As you can see, I have a really old TV here, and fortunately, it does a really nice job at fixing the color. So I'm really happy with that. That's why I used it for this video. The screen is not blank, but so as I just wanted to show one other little thing. So while I'm pretty. Where's my Pac-Man? So I think the problem is this is a cycle where we remove Pac-Man because Namco said no. So, and I was just looking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip to another cycle through the magic of television. And I'm going to use cycle V1. Let's see if this works. Oops. Because I wanted to show you something before we go, if we don't have a lot of questions. Yes, there. Oh, you mentioned the Raspberry Pi Pico. That one already exists, and there's also another one using a 10 Nano 9K, an FPGA package, and that one works really well as well. So look for NABU 10 Nano, and you'll find that one. But what I wanted was, as you can see, I select different cycles because we had them from different times, but I can't remember which ones I'm using. Why is it? That's the wrong one. So let me just fix that one. Okay. And let me turn this a bit. It's always loading Pac-Man, but why is it doing that? Must be cached. Stop serial. Just trying to find my own Pac-Man program. Isn't that a pain? Ah, there we go. So this is my Pac-Man. This is the one that I wrote. It's the second game that I wrote. And I just wanted to take it, show you how it is, because I'm going to give a reference for comparison after. So when I made this Pac-Man, I was tasked by Arthur Ham to make whites of the eyes in the Pac-Man, because it was really hard to do. So as you can see, I actually have whites of the eyes in the Pac-Man, which is kind of neat. So in comparison, I just wanted to show you that because I have something else to show you. I'm just going to leave that there for a moment and pull out this guy here and put it down and ask John Short if he recognizes this guy. So let me get some light in it. That. So this, whoa, my camera, I'm losing it. This here is a prototype MSX machine. This it was given to us at NABU by Kei Nishi, and it came with a Pac-Man cartridge for MSX Pac-Man. This came after my Pac-Man was done, and it was, so this guy here, as you can see, is pretty dusty because it's been sitting in my basement for a long time and I didn't wrap it up. But I'd like to actually fire it up. There's no manufacturer on this. It has no other markings. There's no serial number. There's nothing on it that describes what it is. And what I want to do is steal the connectors out. And I think this is the way they go here, but we'll find out in a second. No. very dusty. So it has, let's see, that's chips here. It has the TMS 9918 and has the AY 38910 like normal MSX. I think that this NEC D70C is the actual Z80. So let's just see how this guy fires up. I see nothing yet. It's no good. Doesn't look like he's operating. It's too bad. It was operating earlier. I'm going to have to clean it up. But I think that I'm going to have to give it some TLC. It's too bad. I wanted to show you the pack, but I should have recorded it. See, it always happens, right? I didn't actually get to record it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean it up and do that for another video. But anyway, I was hoping it would work because I tested it earlier. But it's clearly not cooperating now. And it's too bad. So it needs a little work. So I will do that and fix that guy up. But we're just about approaching the end of the stream. Is there, can you write a food fight clone? No, I don't. I'm not going to write any more games for the NABU. Yes, Aaron, you say there's more biases for the NABU. I actually have 2 more that I should pop out. The one that is in this computer here, that's running right now, has a different bias, and the one that's in John Bobak's machine has yet again a different bias. These ones, the one that's in here is kind of neat because it boots really fast. Like if you tell it, you could tell it to ignore the power on self test. So it really boots fast. And this one also has a completely different one. And just because you asked, I'm going to open this guy up. So there's a genuine floppy controller being in use. And now I'm going to take a look. That one says version 13 CF. Whatever that is, I have no idea. So maybe we should yank that guy out and copy it, because it does something different than the other ones, to the best of my knowledge.